So it was February 10th, 2020, where Joel Embiid was doing his best Jason Tatum impression, which is being cringe on the internet. And he did this by posting a picture with the cliche caption on Instagram that said, "You either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain." But the interesting part about that is he got a response from one Jimmy Butler that said, "I know a place where villains are welcome," in which Joel Embiid responded, "Damn right, my brother." So, of course, back in 2020, this got Heat fans very excited because there was a little bit of flirting going on between our guy Jimmy and one of the best players in the league at the time, Joel Embiid. And here we are 4 years later, and it looks like the Heat might actually have a chance to acquire the star big man because to this day, they are still flirting as overtly as ever. Because, of course, the Heat played the 76ers just a few days ago, in which they kicked their ass. And then after the game, in which Joel Embiid was very disappointing performance-wise, he looked like he really didn't even care out there. But after the game, he was asked about Jimmy Butler, and he said that Jimmy Butler is one of the best players in the league, probably top 5, actually probably the best in the NBA. And then that was a couple days ago. But here we are sitting today, and there's more sort of turmoil or fallout from that game because, of course, we got the Shams report almost immediately after that there was like an hour-long team meeting in which Tyrese Maxey called out Joel Embiid, which I love, by the way, because it's about time someone holds that big man accountable. He's tall, big as ever, and all he does is flop to the ground, hurt people. He's out of shape, but he has a max contract and doesn't act like a guy who deserves a max contract. So I got a lot of respect for Tyrese Maxey calling him out, especially as a young kid. That takes a lot of guts, and I respect it. But that report came out a few days ago. And today, we are still getting more and more talk of things not looking so well in the 76ers organization because, of course, they did play again last night. They lost again to drop them to 2-12. And there's nothing better than losing after a team meeting. I just love that as a 76ers hater, if you want to call me that. But there was a report today from a man named Vince Goodwill, who's a writer for Yahoo Sports, who says that Joel Embiid wanted Jimmy Butler. He told the 76ers, "Go get my guy." I don't think Joel Embiid has been happy, even though they wound up getting Paul George. He wanted Jimmy Butler back over there. So it already starting to sound like Joel Embiid we're finally starting to get some actual reports that he's not so happy in his current situation. But then you had a quote from Joel Embiid today himself, in which he said, whoever leaked that report about the team meeting after the loss to Miami, he said, whoever leaked that report is a real piece of shit. And then he went on to say that they talked about a lot of things in the meeting, and it probably only lasted 30 seconds. Joel, I bet you would know a little something about lasting 30 seconds. But anyways, I honestly believe that that's a damn lie, because all the reports we heard is that it took over an hour for the 76ers to make themselves present for post-game media availability because they were in the locker room having their meeting. How is it possible they were in the locker room for an hour when the meeting was only 30 seconds, according to Joel Embiid? It doesn't make any sense. So clearly he's not very happy there. And this should have Heat fans excited. At least we were 4 years ago when all this rumors or flirting between Embiid and Miami kind of started. But right now, I'm not even sure if Heat fans, including myself, of course, would even want Joel Embiid. I put out an interesting poll on Twitter the other day at AnthonyD_Heat, if y'all want to check it out. But I said, Heat fans, would you trade Tyler Hero for Joel Embiid straight up? Now, the results did end up being, obviously, yes, they would trade Tyler Hero for Joel Embiid, but it was only at 56%. By the way, that poll got 213 votes. So 56% of that said they would, but 43.7%, so almost 44% of people said they would not trade Tyler Hero for Joel Embiid. And keep in mind, there was actually a big swing towards the ending of this poll. But for the most part, for the first 15, 16 hours of this poll, majority of Heat fans that answered this poll wanted or would not trade Tyler Hero for Joel Embiid, which sounds insane. I mean, imagine if you would have said this to Heat fans a year ago. They'd be like, obviously, I would trade Tyler Hero for a bag of chips and Dorian Finney-Smith. Of course, I would trade him for Joel Embiid. But now that's a much bigger question. And personally, myself, I would trade Tyler Hero for Joel Embiid. but not confidently. And I don't know if that's more of an indictment on Tyler Hero's amazing season or more of an indictment on Joel Embiid's terrible season thus far. I do think that it's a little bit of both, I will say, because although Tyler Hero has been awesome this season, he looks like a completely different player. It's still a relatively smaller sample size than what we've seen in the last season or two of his career, but also with Joel Embiid, because it's not a small sample size with his injury, and it's not a small sample size of him looking out of shape, but we also have a monster sample size of him being one of the greatest offensive big men in a very long time. So that's where it becomes a difficult decision, because if you look at Joel Embiid's career stats here, right? He's never played over 65 games in his career, except for twice, and it was barely over. He played 68 games in 2022 and 66 games in 2023. So I know there's some shortened seasons in here and bubble seasons and whatnot, but there's no doubt about it. He's probably the most injury-riddled superstar of the last decade or so. I mean, there's a few other names in there, but I don't want to call anyone out. But he very clearly can't stay healthy, and he's missed a lot of time in the postseason. So what good is having this guy if he's not going to play in the postseason? And that's not to mention that our other superstar, a man by the name of Jimmy Butler, a guy who I do love, but I can't lie to you, he has injury concerns of his own. The whole Heat team really has injury concerns, but imagine having well over 50% of your salary cap tied into two guys who you can't trust to be there in the postseason or play 70-plus games in the regular season. It would be a very difficult situation, especially when you consider both guys are over the age of 30, and usually injuries don't get better with age, especially a guy like Joel Embiid, who's a lot bigger and doesn't seem to take great care of himself. I can't imagine he'd get healthier as time goes on. Now, one thing I do want to say to kind of rebuke that is Jimmy Butler is a big fan of Joel Embiid. And I don't think Jimmy Butler would be that close of a guy. I don't think he'd be that big a fan of someone who isn't a hard worker, who doesn't want to win at all costs. So that being said, from the outside, it looks like Joel Embiid might not care too much about all the right things. But if that was the case, I don't think Jimmy Butler would be friends with him, because there is no doubt in my mind that Jimmy Butler is one of the hardest working people ever, and he has the biggest desire to win a championship. That's part of the reason I believed in Nikola Jovic so much, even during his struggles last season, because we know those two, Jimmy and Jovic, formed a very strong bond. And that only leads me to assume that Jovic is also hardworking. That's why Jimmy kind of took him under his wing. So maybe there is a little bit more to Joel Embiid than meets the eye, but maybe not. Because I kind of had the same ideology when talking about Kyle Lowry, another guy who there was conditioning issues about. But I said, hey, maybe he really is a hard worker behind the scenes, because Jimmy's very close with him too. But we never really saw Kyle Lowry get into any better shape. And there was some behind the scenes issues going on while he was here, because Lowry didn't want to be benched and certain things like that. But all of those concerns being said, Joel Embiid is one of the best players in the NBA when healthy. I mean, you could see his numbers here on the screen. 35 points per game last season, led the league in scoring the previous 2 seasons. I know there might be some fit concerns considering Jimmy's not really a three-point shooter and Bam is still trying to come into his own in that regard. But I think that big three would be nasty, because of course Bam Adebayo isn't going anywhere. While I said I would trade Tyler for Joel Embiid, I would never trade Bam Adebayo. There's maybe 1 or 2 people I would trade Bam Adebayo for, and that's like Luka and Wemby. Like, those are the only 2 I'd say. But I do think a big three of Jimmy, Bam, and Embiid could work it out, just because, one, Bam is starting to stretch the floor. While Joel Embiid is not a great three-point shooter, he is a guy that's taken 3 to 4 threes a game for his entire career pretty much. So I don't think there'd be too much spacing concerns, because you still have to respect those guys. They're not like complete non-shooters out there. So I would love to get Joel Embiid on the team because of the skill and the talent, and I'm a guy who wants to win in Jimmy Butler's window, which may only be another year or 2. So I'm okay going all in to sort of maximize that and saying, hey, screw the future, quite frankly. Try to win now, because you can't take a championship window for granted. And when you have a guy like Jimmy Butler, I think you always have a championship window, because I think Jimmy Butler is that good. So I almost think we'd be doing him a disservice by waiting for a lot of these younger players to develop. So not even saying I would trade Tyler if we didn't have to, but I would trade a Jaime, I would trade a Jovic, I would trade whatever other young pieces and picks you have to get Embiid on the roster, because I agree with all the concerns. I'm just not, I'm willing to take the risk for a guy of his caliber. I really, really am. The other concerning part is the contract situation, because Joel Embiid is getting paid a hell of a lot of money for a lot of years. This season, he's making almost $52 million. Next season, he'd be making $55 million. And then the year after that is where his 3-year max extension kicks in. So starting at the age of 32, Joel Embiid will be making $60 million, $64 million, and then almost $70 million at the age of 34 if he was to accept that player option. If Joel Embiid's health is only starting to decline from today, I can't imagine what he's going to look like when he's 34 years old. And paying a guy $70 million at 34 is scary, especially if you're going to be committing $55, $60 million to an aging Jimmy Butler. It really is. And don't forget, Bam Adebayo's got that max extension also. So almost your entire salary cap will be tied into those 3 players, and it'd be a bunch of undrafted guys surrounding them, which the Heat could make work, because if any team has found these undrafted gems, the Heat are the best at it for sure. We're seeing it right now with the revival of Drew Smith. Kashad Johnson is balling out in the Summer League. So I do think it could work, but those salary numbers do scare me, especially since in a Joel Embiid trade, you likely would have to trade Tyler Hero. Just because of the money, you're going to find a need to make matching salaries. But Tyler Hero makes a hell of a lot less than Joel Embiid. This season, Tyler's only making $29 million, and then he's got $31 million the year after that and $33 million the year after that. And he'll only be 27, by the way. So, I mean, really, in order to get Joel Embiid on the roster, if you keep Jimmy and Bam, there's no way to do it without trading the salaries of Tyler and Duncan. I mean, maybe Terry and Duncan could work, but it's just very clear for the skill sets that they have. Tyler Hero's a much better value. I mean, he's literally getting paid way less than half as much as Joel Embiid, half as much at a much younger age, and he's playing much better so far throughout this season. Although the sample size is small, especially for Embiid, he's only played 4 games. So it's a risk. So anyone that may disagree with me and doesn't want Joel Embiid, I understand it. I'm verbally saying all the risks to you right now. But truthfully, I think it's a risk I take because Joel Embiid is that good. Not that I'm a fan of his. I hate the flopping. I hate the whining, all that other stuff. But there is always a chance that once you get him into Heat culture, he would fix all that maybe. I don't know. Kyle Lowry never really fixed the flopping. But Kyle Lowry was also never an MVP. So anyways, that's all I got to say for this video. So let me know y'all thoughts down below. Would you trade for Joel Embiid as a Miami Heat fan? And if you would, what's the most you would give up? Would you give up a Tyler Hero? Would you add our young players with Tyler Hero? Would you just trade the young players? Let me know all y'all thoughts down below. And make sure to like and comment and subscribe because all that stuff really, really does help me out a lot. All the support is greatly appreciated. I'll see y'all in the next video. Peace out, y'all.
Look, pull up in your city trying to get that dead face. Do it on my own, I don't need no dead weight. Had to kill him off, yeah, I need a head space. You know this homegrown bitch don't offend me.